In short, and to the point because it's late, the limits of papal power systematically seen. There's the natural law. Can the Pope turn black into white? No. According to St. Ignatius of Loyola, yes. St. Ignatius of Loyola, I quote him literally, "What seems to me white, I will believe black if the hierarchical church so determines it." That's against natural law. If the Pope says the earth is flat, I will tell him no. And he's not going to make me say the earth is flat. And if the Pope says that a tree grows upside down, I will say not usually. And if the Pope tells me black is white, I will say, sorry, Pontiff, that's not true. St. Robert Bellarmine, I will save his reputation by giving more quotations, don't worry. St. Robert Bellarmine, at one point, when he must have been drunk or something like that, he says, if the Pope errs by commanding vices or forbidding virtues, the Church must believe that vices are good and virtues bad, unless it wishes to sin against conscience. Toodaloo. Welcome to the nut house. Well, fortunately, the same Bellarmine, thank God, in his in his treatise, De Romano Pontifice, he says, the Pope can fall into heresy. First. Second, unjust laws of the Pope do not bind in conscience. The Pope is neither the temporal ruler of the world, he's neither the temporal ruler of the world nor the Christian world. See? He's not even the temporal ruler of the Christian world, contrary to what Boniface VIII said. And he has the supreme temporal power only indirectly, namely telling George Bush to keep the Ten Commandments. Then there's the limit of divine law. The Pope cannot change the sacraments. Pope Innocent III said, if a future Pope was to change the rites of the sacraments, he would put himself outside the Church. That's a papal pronouncement, Innocent III. And Innocent III was a good Pope. St. Bernard of Clairvaux wrote to Eugene III, De Consideratione, 4th book, 23. Remember above all things that the Holy Roman Church, over which God has established you as head, is the mother, and not the mistress of other churches. And that you are not the Lord of bishops, but one of their number. Now, St. Bernard was not a heretic. He meant it. The Pope is one of the bishops, except he has the last word. The primacy of the Pope is not that the Pope is Bishop of Baltimore, Bishop of Washington, Bishop of Chicago. The primacy of the Pope is he has the last word. The bishops rule their dioceses and every 5 years report to the Pope afterwards. When Pius IX in 1870 defined the Papal Infallibility, the Chancellor of Germany, Bismarck, was furious. So the German bishops had to explain what Pius IX didn't explain. The German bishops wrote to Bismarck and said, don't worry, if the Archbishop of Cologne dies, the Pope does not become Archbishop of Cologne. The Pope is not the Bishop of Berlin. The Pope is not the Archbishop of München-Freising. And the German bishops explained that limit to the papacy. Thank God, Blessed Pius IX signed it. So it is papal teaching now. But it's sad enough that the German bishops had to explain what Pius IX failed to explain. Then, of course, there's the limit to the papal power through ecclesiastical law. And I quote one of the most common moral theological books, Prümer OP. Remember above all things that the Holy Roman Church wrong paragraph. Moral theology teaches that the legislator is subject to his own laws, if not by coercive power, force from outside, at least in the manner of a directive. Precepts that are unjust, null, harmful, do not require obedience, except for the sake of avoiding scandal. If it's an unimportant thing, then he would cause scandal not keeping it. Like if I as a diabetic, do not have to keep Friday, but I'm certainly not going to eat a steak publicly here on Friday, right? Because you wouldn't understand. or anybody here who is over 60 doesn't have to keep it. But it doesn't behoove a man to sit here in front of all Catholics and eat a steak on Friday just because he has the right to do it. And if a Spaniard is here, he will have to abstain from meat here too, even though in Spain he doesn't have to. Then there's the dogmatic limit to the papal power. Revelation, obvious. The deposit of faith, it's obvious. He cannot define what is in no way related to revelation. The Pope cannot issue a dogmatic definition that John Deere are the best tractors. Nothing runs like a deer. The Pope cannot define that. It has nothing to do with revelation. He has to stick most faithfully to tradition. He cannot introduce any novelty. And he has to follow the previous doctrinal decisions of his predecessors. Gregory says, we believe we hold the first four councils on the level of the gospel. And then, of course, there are practical limits to papal power: politics, disease, blackmail. A pope can be blackmailed into do something. Sure. Stupidity. If the pope is one of those cases, born dumb, learned nothing, forgot everything, and still elected pope, his limited intelligence will put a limit on his papal office. That's very obvious. We have seen the many cases where vices kept the pope from doing his duty. Think of Clement VII. What was Clement VII's vice? He didn't even have women and children and stuff like that. All he did was, he was so busy with the money for his family that he couldn't really watch a certain Dr. Martin Luther in the north of Germany, and lost 1/3 of Christianity. So, on those limits of the papal power, you can easily see, and I've given you a skeleton of what has to be said about it, because otherwise we'd be sitting here until 3 o'clock in the morning. I've given you a skeleton. Make sure you get your tapes from him and him. Make sure you get your tapes so you can study it again and think further, because I just mentioned, I'll do it again. Politics, disease, blackmail, stupidity, and vices. That's what came to my mind as the practical limits to papal authority. And that's something to be considered very seriously. Does that mean you have the right to condemn a stupid pope? No. Especially not if he's stupid, because if he's stupid, it's not his fault. God distributes intelligence. We get a chance to train our intelligence, and many people omit that chance. But it's God's to give us intelligence or not. Some saints, some of the greatest saints, were most definitely stupid. The Saint John Maria Vianney, the parish priest, the curé d'Ars, he was very stupid. He had incredible difficulties in his theological studies. He just couldn't put things together, and he was working hard, very hard. He wrote hours on a sermon. I just walk up the pulpit, say, In nomine Patris, Filii, Spiritus Sancti, and start to speak. That's a gift from God. If I praise myself for it, I am stupid. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact that St. John Maria Vianney on this point was stupid. So, he had the gift of introspection. He would tell you in the confessional, your last confession was not 15 years ago, it was 23 years ago, and you didn't come back to church because of this and that and that and that. And by the way, you forgot to mention the following 3 mortal sins. So that stupid man has been given the gift of introspection. He was the most famous confessor in contemporary France, and he is a saint, which I will never be. I will never be a canonized saint. I'm happy if I'm the last one to sneak in. So don't condemn popes just because they were stupid. Don't condemn anybody, as a matter of fact. Judge you not, that you not be judged.